Will you remind me to get the address?
Yes.
She's freaking out. It's convenient for you to have it up here.
Okay,
I'm the only one that's convenient.
assuming that the clock is right, it's past 7:15, so I will call to order the zoning board of appeals meeting for January 15th, 2015. We're at the Littleton Town offices in room 307 at 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. And the meeting is open. So first we have administrative matters and minutes. Have you had a chance to look over? Do you want to do minutes?
We don't have any minutes.
Oh, okay. We have one set that's still left undone and one set that I think I owe. Oh, all right, that's fine. So administrative matters and accounts payable. Do you have any things to sign? Checks for payment now? Quiet, good. We had a short meeting, Bill, Shelley, Roland, and I, about, once again, trying to troubleshoot these applications, because as hard as we try to make the instructions simple and guide everybody as to how to file them, we're still having difficulty with the filings not being complete, and Shelley having to do a lot more work here in the office than she should be doing. So we had a discussion about some of the things we might still change on it, but I just wanted to report back to you, Bill. I went to the town of Westford and I downloaded and asked them to share some of their forms with us, and they said to me, interestingly enough, we're having exactly the same trouble with our very detailed set of instructions that you were going to borrow and pirate from us, and maybe we'd like to see yours, because maybe together we can come up with something. And they also said, interestingly enough, they're having a great deal of difficulty with instructions that will answer some of the questions on the case after Diedrich. And he said, and I also want you to know that I downloaded something that I found in some other research on it, so consistent with what your opinion is, what the town of Westford said was, we're all guided by expert legal counsel in zoning, and even they can't agree on what it says or what it means, but they think that, and maybe we have an expert in real estate conveyance and zoning in the room, maybe he can help, but they're thinking that what we're already doing, which is you have a pre-existing nonconformity, and you are going to extend it or add to it in such a way that there are absolutely no new nonconformities and no extension of the existing nonconformity, the building inspector can pass on that without it coming here. Then you have a pre-existing nonconformity where there are new nonconformities being considered. That needs to be a variance as to the new nonconformities. But if it's an extension of the pre-existing nonconformities, that's a special permit. And so you theoretically could have to act on a special permit and a variance in the same hearing for the same property. And I did finally read Diedrich, as you asked me to, and I think the concept under Diedrich was any other result means that if I have a non-conforming house and I want to make a new nonconformity, I was going to be able to do it by a special permit, which is a lower standard than someone with a conforming house would have to go by. And that's why they're saying if it's a new nonconformity, it needs to be a variance, just like someone whose house conforms. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, do you want to?
I'm going to read the case right now.
And if I can add to this a little bit, Diedrich is a court case that has come out within the last year and a half. Prior to that, there was another court case, which was Gloucester versus Gale. And, that changed what a lot of zoning officers, building inspectors, and zoning boards had felt about non-conforming lots, non-conforming structures, and additions, alterations, extensions, or whatever else. And before that, backing up, the thing keeps changing. There was a lot of mixed opinions between the legal people and the enforcement people, the people working with zoning, as to if you have a non-conforming lot and or a non-conforming structure, do you want to do an addition, alteration, extension, whatever else? Was it a special permit or was it a variance? There was a lot of mixed feelings. So when Gale came through and says, if you got a non-conforming lot, a non-conforming structure, it's no matter what you want to do, it was going to be a special permit. And then Dieter came through recently and kind of backed up and changed that back again. So that's what we've been debating with.
So Jeff Morissette, who's the planner in Westford, shared with me that he said Westford is working on a bylaw revision that will address this specifically so that applicants who are coming here for something will be able to look to the bylaw to see if they need a variance or a special permit. And I liked that idea because when Gail came down,
Yep.
and there was that distinction about can the building inspector do it or does it have to come to the board, we actually, Jan Plowey and Sally Bowers and myself and some others, we actually worked on a bylaw committee to draft that new bylaw and asked the planning board to approve it and present it for town meeting. So if you guys are at all interested, I certainly would like to see if we can get maybe a couple or three of us to work on a bylaw draft revision, just because I think it would help the public to understand what they need to do.
You know, I like that. And, you know, two previous towns that I've worked in, one is a full-time building inspector zoning officer, and the other one is a alternate, and temporarily, I was full-time building inspector zoning officer. Both of those towns had a very clear statement in their zoning bylaw that addressed it. It says if you want to do X, Y, and Z, and it meets certain parameters, the building inspector can make what's called a Section 6 finding and then issue the building permit. If you don't meet X, Y, and Z conditions, then you have to go to the zoning board of appeals. And I think, I agree, definitely agree, it should be very clear in the zoning bylaws so that everybody, not only the enforcement end of it, but the developers, designers, and the general public understand what it is and makes it clear for them to act.
So is there anyone who's interested or willing to work on that drafting?
I will.
You want to work on it?
Yeah.
All right, so you want to maybe get the three of us together to
Yeah,
do that?
yeah, I would,
Okay.
because no previous experience in dealing with a lot of zoning cases and a lot of situations.
Great. Well, that was a good way to waste 10 of those minutes that I have to burn up here. We have our first hearing scheduled for 7:30. It's a variance sign and awning hearing for 37 Air Road. And because it's a noticed hearing to abutters, we cannot start early. So if anyone is here for that, we'll address that. We also, I don't know, I see other abutters in the room. We also have a scheduled 7:45 hearing on 225 Great Road LLC on a use variance for parking. Mr. Alphen will be presenting, but he has written a letter requesting continuance of that hearing. So we'll have to open it to do the continuance. We probably will read into the record some of the letters that have been received. But if you're here for that hearing, rest assured you'll be going home early tonight. And then our last hearing would be, it's a discussion, it's scheduled for 8:15 PM. It's not noticed to abutters, so we don't have to wait for the designated time to start that. What I would plan to do, since we're gonna have a big gap when the 225 Great Road hearing adjourns, I would plan to open the discussion on 15 Great Road 2 LLC and try to at least run it until 8:10 or 8:15. So if there are people who have seen it posted and stagger in to comment to it, we won't let the applicant out of the room until we've heard from people that might want to come in. And maybe I'll describe for the first applicant, take some time now to do that. The procedure here before the board is that when your case is called, you'll step forward and present your argument informally or formally, where we don't stand on ceremony here. After you present, the board will ask questions. After the board asks questions, we'll ask the audience whether there's anybody who wants to speak to the application. The board can ask you for additional materials. They may ask you to show some things. After that, we'll ask the applicant again if there's any comments back. Anything else happen that anybody wants to talk about? Anybody know what's going on with Sam Park? Was there a meeting on that recently?
The Marriott is gonna be the hotel.
That's good news. Very exciting news.
Haven't got a building permit yet.
Okay,
The vitamin shop is trying to open.
I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that.
DEP is doing the water test at 15 Great Road tomorrow.
Oh, they're doing the water test tomorrow? Like that clear water test that they said they were gonna be doing? Do you know if the components got hooked up? Well, they'll tell us that when we open, we better not talk about it yet.
Yeah, that came up at the Board of Health meeting.
I will report to you that I had a ZBA hearing in Attleboro this week, and it was very interesting. They were very professional and very knowledgeable. They seem to have a planner in the city of Attleboro who attends the meetings and was able to give a lot of input, but there are two things they did that I was very surprised about. One was that the first presenter was an attorney who was very long-winded and had to tell this three-generation story of love and romance as to how this property came to be and how the two abutters came to have easements back and forth, and the woman was the clerk of courts and she married the judge, and all this big long-winded story. But it went on for about 2 hours. They had scheduled all of their hearings that night for 6:30, so my 6:30 hearing was still waiting at 8:30 while this long-winded attorney was still talking about this marriage that had nothing to do with zoning. But it was such an interesting story that everyone was patient in listening to it. But the other thing they did was they continued 2 of the hearings, him and mine, for 2 weeks without stating a time certain, which I found interesting. Unless they just do all their hearings at 6:30 and they just,
Speaking of which, the February meeting, the regularly scheduled date is the 19th.
yeah, we could do
Don't
that.
be
That's school vacation, so you may want to discuss.
I think we should go a week earlier, and the reason I say that is, I don't know what's gonna happen tonight on 15 Great Road, but there could be a reason to try to do a faster meeting for them if things don't go exactly as they hope, with that DEP test being tomorrow. So I think we should go a week earlier if everyone can do that, instead of a week later. Okay? You don't have any applications in yet, do you?
There's one that will be coming in, I don't have it yet, but I told him I would let him know tomorrow what the date would be. But he still has enough time that I can put it in the independent, so.
He'll still have enough time in the independent if it comes in tomorrow.
Yep.
Excuse me, Patrick. Anybody want candy down there?
For the committee, is there 3 of us?
Yeah, we have to post
Is
it.
this today's
Has to be
paper?
posted?
Yes.
Make it, did I make it?
Yeah, we're just waiting for 7:30 to open the first hearing, so you're just in time.
Sorry, everyone, I was working late today.
Well, I declare it close enough. Secondhand probably is 30 seconds more, so. Time is now 7:30 PM. I'm going to open the hearing of case number 846, Viewpoint Sign and Awnings, request for a variance under section 173-35C1 for a proposed sign at 37 Air Road. Step forward, please, and
Good
identify.
evening, my name is Mike Force from Viewpoint Sign and Awning.
Pardon me. My apologies, I'm sorry.
You have 4 members.
My vice chair is right. I've only got 4 regular members, so I have to appoint a voting alternate. Alan, you're sitting in a good spot.
Okay.
Please continue, I'm sorry.
So, I represent O'Brien Properties, 37 Air Road. In preparing for this meeting this evening, we realized, based on the additional information that the board requires, that we realized we were unprepared to present that information this evening, and I would like to ask the board at this time to not rule on this at this point and to grant us a continuance for next month, if that's possible.
So that's certainly possible. I understood that you might want to make a presentation.
Sure, yeah.
It'll be the same 5, and we'll not only take it under consideration, but you'll get a feeling for what our direction is going and what we need as additional information.
That'd be
and that
great.
might
Yep,
be-
I would love, yeah, I would love to do that. What we're proposing on this site is a internally illuminated, double-sided sign for the tenants that occupy 37 Air Road. The size of the sign is basically the same size as the existing sign that is there now. Our proposal was to move it closer to the driveway and closer to the road to be visible. And I guess we're about we figured it's about 17 feet from the curb off the road.
I'm sorry, how many?
About 17 feet from the curb. I think the reason we were trying to get a variance for this, I believe for this property, I think the square footage allowance is 40 square feet for this area, which is fine if it was a single tenant property. But this is multiple tenant, and we'd like to give each tenant as large a space as possible to be recognized from the highway. And that was the reason. And again, it's the size of the sign is basically the same size as the existing one that's on the property.
So what is the overall size?
Excuse me?
What is the overall size?
It's about 73 square feet.
73 square feet. Are you aware that there is zoning bylaw information going around and coming before the board that forbids internally lit signs?
It's,
There are
not aware of
bylaws
that.
being worked on, they have
There
not
is
been come
bylaws
up.
being worked on now.
Right, but one of the
Okay.
tenets in those bylaws is it forbids internally lit signs. So that's something for you to keep in mind when you come back before us. I would have trouble with this large a sign that is internally lit, whereas I would not have trouble, given the location and it's where it is and the number of businesses on, if it wasn't internally lit. If it was externally illuminated with spotlights, I wouldn't have a problem with that. But I would have a trouble with an internally illuminated one.
Good feedback.
I would, we went by to see the sign on the way here tonight, and I'm delighted to see that you have enough tenants now that you can get past C in the alphabet. Because our tenants right now are A's and C's.
Another proposal that I would certainly include for the board to review is, if it would help, I mean, we could put something on the site at this size. It would be kind of just a structure,
mock-up.
a mock-up, just probably a rectangular sign or just square on poles, so you could, and in position approximately where it would be located, so you can have an idea of exactly how large it is as it on the footprint on the property.
When we zoning limits it to 2 colors, is that white considered one of the colors?
I don't think we have a color limit on industrial. You're in the industrial district there.
We don't have a color
I don't
limit
think
on the
we have a color
industrial,
limit.
just in the residential?
Yeah. And I'm not sure that I'm satisfied you're limited to 50 square feet, because you have business groups. So under E, you have groups of 3 or more businesses on a single lot, such as a plaza or shopping center. So as an alternative to C1, which is 50 square feet, you can have the following. I don't know what the NE is for. One principal freestanding sign of 12 square feet identifying the plaza, with no more than an additional 12 square foot panel for each business. Oh, the total aggregate's still not to exceed 50. So we're at 50 anyway. And I will say that I noticed that your abutters going further would be the Littleton Electric. Across the street, it looks like you've got wetlands and the Sandville
Yeah, the
Tank
construction
Construction Company. And what's before you if I'm going toward Air?
The highway department is down the street.
No, the other side of
Oh,
it.
the other side.
Clancy's driveway.
old house way up on the-
Clancy's driveway.
Oh, and
up the
it's
hill.
way in back, but that probably is residential.
Residential.
That is
That
residential.
abuts you, and that they could build down below, I suppose. Okay, go ahead.
All right, we need to clarify a few points here.
Yep.
I don't know if everybody has read the application or not. And now, with the diagram that's in here, Now, it shows a small picture of the existing sign.
Correct.
As you drive by and everything else, it's obvious that sign is not the same size as what you're proposing. You're proposing 6 foot by 11 foot 9, roughly 72 square feet. That sign definitely is not the same size.
Well,
Yeah.
there were additional tenant panels that are not on that existing sign.
I know,
So taking
but-
that into consideration, it would be approximately the same size.
You know, Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
there are 2 copies of this up here. The administrator has pulled out from the building department files, the original sign permit has been issued for the sign that's out there existing is 4 foot by 10 foot, 40 square feet, which meets the regulation. Therefore, this should be this is a request for a variance for a sign larger than what's out there, not as stated in the application. So if you're gonna go back, if you said you wanna continue, go back there and do more information, I think you need to revise your statement saying that you're increasing from a legal size sign of 40 square feet to an increased sign of 72 square feet.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think when we first applied for this, I think the individual we were speaking to said that they weren't even sure if a permit had been pulled for the original sign.
But
they
even if
found
you
it
take a look at the
since-
sign out there, which we have a photo of here, you look at it, it's obvious it's not 50
Right,
square
but
feet.
as it was designed, there were additional tenant panels underneath that are missing, that would add to
Right.
the square footage.
It's still permitted at a 4 by 10,
4
which
by
is
10.
40 square feet. But that doesn't mean you're not entitled to ask for a variance.
Right.
Your application, that's what I was just checking, your application seeks a variance, so he's filed it
Yep.
properly. It's been advertised as a variance.
right.
And so that doesn't preclude you from coming back to present it as a request for a variance. So your dimensions, I think, are adequate. It would be great if we had a mock-up. I would love
Yep.
for you to do that. And if the mock-up could be located with the setback you're proposing.
Yes.
So it's, so that we can really see what it's gonna look like. And when you come back to present it as a variance, you'll just have to create a statement that satisfies the requirements for a variance, which is that owing to the soil shape or topography, that the lot is unique in some fashion, and that there is a hardship not to allow a sign that exceeds the
The speed
50 square
of, the
feet.
speed of traffic along that
Right,
road, the
yeah.
narrowness of that road. We have granted variance to your neighbor up the street and size of sign because of the speed of traffic, the narrowness of the road, needing a truck driver to be able to
See
see,
inside?
all those good things. But like I said, I do have a problem with the internally lit,
Lit,
especially
okay.
one of this size.
So I want to finish with the board questions, and I want to ask if there's anyone here, but I'm also going to just ask the board across whether everyone has the same internally lit problem, so we might as well get that information out here
Okay.
today, too. Bill?
Question for you, how many tenant spaces are there in that building now?
There are, I think they have room for approximately 10.
Okay, the reason I ask that is because, look, part of what you have indicated with the application is because now for, have enough panels on the sign for the tenant spaces.
Right, correct.
So, if there are 10 tenant spaces,
There
then
are-
there should be
yeah.
10 panels, so.
That's what he's showing.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
sure. Yeah, but not, they're not all full.
Yeah, so that should,
They're in, yes.
I would suggest that when you come back with a write-up, that you're gonna modify, that you would include that information.
Okay.
So that would make it easier for us to make an appropriate decision.
All right.
Okay, is there anybody here that wants to speak to this petition, any abutters to 37 Air Road? Just can't see around you, sir. Okay, thank you. Any of the board members have any other questions? Anything, Jeff?
Did,
I concur with Cheryl
About
about
the illumination?
Clearly, you're within, a smaller sign can be internally lit based on the bylaw, but when we have, if you go up the road where we have granted, and this is very similar to the one for the distribution center. I mean, do you remember how big that was, or? looks like a very similar sign. I don't
Very
know
similar
Yeah.
from my
If you
memory.
provided it or not, but it's not internally lit.
And just as a sign builder, a word to the interested, we love it if you have some sort of a planting or
Oh,
a base and
Right.
you lift
Yeah.
it up a little bit.
yes. Yeah, that would be up to the owner. We were looking, for positioning only at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I hope this has been helpful to you.
Yes, it has been, so.
And I would entertain a motion to continue the hearing as the applicant has requested to our next meeting, which is February 12th, and a time certain, please.
You want to do 7:30?
Do
Yes,
we have
please.
anyone for 7:30 yet?
And we made it the 12th because the next week is school vacation, Cheryl?
I'm checking the calendar.
Madam Chair?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Wait till we vote it.
You have to vote.
I make the motion that we continue the hearing for case number 846A, 37
I think Alan already made the motion.
Air Road, to 7:30 PM on February 12th, 2015.
Second.
Alan,
And
thank you.
seconded.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome, thank you. Okay, we have to wait till 7:45 for the next hearing. We have 2 or 3
Maybe
minutes.
February 12th. Now, what did we do before we had electronics like this? I can do February
Did you
12th.
finish with Diedrich? Will you give us the?
I did, I'd read it before, and I read it again, and they just skirted the whole issue and just created more confusion, and they based their decision on some other recent non-conforming cases that the courts got wrong. They misunderstood the facts of the case. So I'm just concerned about whether we're rolling down the hill the wrong way, and whether the courts are helping people understand any better under what circumstances you need a special permit and when you need a variance.
That's interesting. I will say that, like I said, and like Jeff Morris had said, the town council across the board have not been consistent. Now, Bill went to one symposium with, who was at that
No,
one?
Roland went to a symposium where the town of Harvard, town council, was kind of unsure about it as well.
But where did you go that you said they were very definite about it?
No, where I got it was from Barbara St. Andre, who put out a paper to her clients, towns and others in the zoning field.
What's unhelpful about this decision is a set of facts where they have a bylaw that allow you to expand your building over the maximum height limitation if you're in the FEMA district and the additional height is required. And the court just didn't deal with the fact. They sent it back to the board to figure out whether that exemption applied to this particular piece of property, rather than dealing with it. And the poor people involved in this whole thing, they've been to the land court, now they've been to the appeals court, now they're gonna go back again.
That's what struck me too when I read it, is that it seemed like a very narrow set of facts to make such a global change on what the cities and towns have been doing.
Yeah, and yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, it is 7:45, so that ate up the time. I will open the hearing, 7:45 hearing on case number 845A, 225 Great Road LLC, which is a request for a variance under section 17326 use regulations schedule to allow the use of a residentially zoned land for uses accessory to the retail car dealership at 221 Great Road. We are going to appoint Rod for this as the 5th voting member, because we only have 4 regulars. And I will ask you, Mr. Alphen, to please make your presentation.
For the record, I'm Paul Alphen. I represent 225 Great Road LLC, the owner of the property. And I submitted a letter to the Office of the Board of Appeals yesterday that we understand there are concerns regarding the petition, and including a recent meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We had not seen the letter as of yesterday, but we've since seen the letter. And based upon that letter and some other letters that we have seen in opposition to the variance, we have requested that we have some additional time to digest the letters and to see if there's some way we can address the concerns or see if it would be appropriate to withdraw the request altogether, but we didn't want to have to make that decision in 24 hours. And so in that spirit, we have submitted a request that the board continue the public hearing without hearing any evidence until their next meeting. And in the meanwhile, if you receive any other correspondence, that will be added to our information that we will assimilate and deal with and come back next month either with a new plan or withdrawal or damn the Peter was full speed ahead.
So, your request is that we continue without hearing any evidence, which I have no problem with, but we've just made our next meeting on February 12th, and my understanding is that the planning board would like to have some input into this. Some of the comments we got back were from planning board members, and I'm wondering if it would cause you any undue harm if we gave you a 2-month continuance so that you would have time to approach the planning board and/or the selectmen or any other board you think might benefit your cause.
Be a pleasure to extend it until
That'd be
February.
okay.
I mean, to March.
Till
rather,
March.
yeah.
I think it gives you more time to meet
Sure.
with whomever you need to.
We have a lot of people in the room. Do it be appropriate to let the people who made the effort to come down here not have to come back on March and be able to state their concerns or support?
I don't particularly have any objection, except that the applicant has requested that no evidence be taken at this time. He's not presented a case. I just would be interested, at a show of hands, please, if you're here to speak to this if you came here to speak to this application. And how many are abutters? Excuse me, how many are abutters? 2. I'm sorry, I
May
didn't
we
hear.
speak?
You wish to speak?
May we, over this?
I haven't decided yet. It's the applicant's pleasure, because he's asked me to go forward without, to continue without any evidence being presented. Normally, we let the applicant present first. Do you have any objection if I hear them?
I wasn't prepared to make a presentation. I told my client to stay home tonight. I did not bring my my full set of materials. I didn't even wear a tie. I didn't expect to make a presentation. I didn't expect there would be evidence submitted in the normal course. I think
I don't think
I
we're
think-
talking evidence, I think we're talking opinions.
well,
No, I think in fairness-
that's all considered to be evidence in
Yeah.
a quasi-judicial administrative board setting.
And I think in fairness to the abutter, I also have in my file letters from different boards that were submitted tonight, but at the request of the abutter, he's asked for continuance before it gets opened. If we're quasi-judicial, if we were in a judicial forum, that request would be granted. So as much as I want to hear you, and I know you want to be heard, and you came for that purpose, I think it's only fair to wait and let the abutter present his whole case. It may go away. We don't know. Go ahead.
I'm a businessman in town. My name is Joe Cataldo. I live on Robinson Road. I have been before your board many times. I had a residential piece of property, and I had to go through the special permit process to be able to operate my business. I feel that this applicant flies in the face of the zoning bylaw that I have that represents what Littleton stands for and what you people are engaged to enforce.
Mr. Cataldo, I respect your position, and I will hear your position fully.
Fine.
The
Okay.
board will hear your position fully when the case is properly opened, and we go in the right order. The applicant gets to present first, and then everyone, the board gets to ask questions, and then all the abutters get to be heard. I don't think I've ever been known to cut a hearing short, and I will hear you all, but it has to be when the case
Understood.
opens.
I just,
Would you be
Okay.
available in March?
if I know the date, I absolutely will be available in March, yes.
Do we know the
And-
date for March?
Go ahead, Mr. Sanders.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to try to understand that with this board, where is it that citizen has the opportunity to come before this board and put input in before anything? There's no way for us to know that they're gonna ask for a change or whatever the case is, but I think in all due respect, for the citizen in general they should have a public forum. You should give them opportunity to address what is on the agenda.
Then you may have misunderstood what we are doing here. This applicant has simply said he would like to go back to the drawing board and revise his presentation, possibly change his presentation, possibly bring it before another board, not this board, whatever. If he comes back to this board, we are tonight going to give him a continuation date and time certain. I'll give you the courtesy of asking if you're going to be available in that March date, and that will be the date that this will be publicly heard if it is going to stay with this board to make the decision. I'll just give you an example. This is a request for a use variance. There are other ways that the abutter can skin this cat, if you will, and he might find that he can go before the planning board. He might find that he can go before town meeting for a zoning change. There are a lot of different ways to do this. If he comes back before this board, there will be a public hearing. You will all be heard. And that date is going to be in March.
As long as I have the
Can I
date.
answer? I think, no, I'm understanding a little bit different question. All applications are filed with the town clerk's office and available in the building inspector's office at least 10 days prior to the hearing. All the butters are notified, okay? So, even if there's going to be a change to the proposal before the next hearing, that has to be filed with the town clerk's office or with the the administrative board, the zoning board, in sufficient time so it can be disseminated amongst the board members. Yes, anybody in the public has an interest should come in and check with the building department to find out, what has been submitted, so you at least know what we would be looking at, during the hearing.
I'll also tell you that all of the materials that got submitted with this application are on file in the Board of Appeals office. You're welcome to come in and read the letters that were submitted. Shelley has also posted on the website through, I think Mr. Bergman's done a wonderful job of making sure our website is always updated. So you can always find continued hearings and hearing notices. As tonight, the request of the applicant to continue for 2 weeks was posted. So I am not even going to take from the presence of people here what the for and against opposition is, because I think there may be people that would have come except that they saw it's going to be continued. So our continued hearing will be in March. Can we get a date in March?
19th.
Pardon me?
19th.
It's the third Thursday in March. That's March 19th. And the time certain will be,
7:45, because
let's put that, let's do them at 7:30 because they,
If we're gonna get people, we'd like to
yeah, we'll get,
get them in and out.
Yep.
Not wait.
One motion?
yes.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we continue the hearing for 221 Great Road, case number 845A, to March 19, 2015, at 7:30 PM.
Second? Second. Rod, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your understanding.
Okay.
What's that?
We're muttering, not necessarily appropriately. Now we only have how many left?
Was that the one you were?
That was one, yeah.
The next hearing is an informal discussion, and it is scheduled for 8:15, but we don't have to wait because it's not a posted and notice to, it's not notice to abutters. So you can come in and start your presentation. Have I got people in the hall on 15 Great Road LLC? Good evening.
I thought I had the wrong one because Mark went there in the signature. His spot. The third Thursday.
capital things or just discussion? I think there's a lot of paperwork on it. Is this to be passed out?
I didn't know if you wanted those passed out, so I made
Yeah, let's
copies.
pass it out.
And then it's also underneath that is what Chris had said this afternoon.
Two handouts together.
Are they the same?
This way. Yeah, no, these are two separate handouts. No short one?
Oh, no, there's one page. Okay, so do you have one more?
Let me see if I have one more. I think you can have
Yep.
mine.
Yeah,
We
I've
can
already-
share because I have some of it
I've
in my
already got it,
file.
I
here.
believe.
Okay.
Yeah, they're in the packets, I think. And then the bottom one is what came in today, Sherry, the,
Yeah, no.
There's both in there. And I have,
Okay, glad to give it up. I love it.
well, going down the line, I have Patrick as the fifth voting member tonight.
You're in on this case.
So just let me catch up to myself and then I'll let you have the floor. Okay, who's presenting? Mr. Hale?
Sure. So thank you for your time. I think the purpose of tonight's meeting is a couple-fold. First,
I'm sorry, David, I don't mean to do this to you. I didn't open you. I didn't formally open it. I'm sorry. The time is 7:59 PM. I'm opening the discussion of case number 795B, 15 Great Road 2 LLC, request for modification of a 40B comprehensive permit to determine whether the change is substantial or insubstantial. And for the benefit of my board, I just want to remind you, this applicant has a comprehensive permit at 15 Great Road. Whenever there's a requested change to the decision, the comprehensive permit decision, the 40B, Chapter 40B regulations require us first to determine if that change is substantial or insubstantial. If we determine it to be insubstantial, we can deal with it at this board tonight. If we determine it to be a substantial change, then we have to post it and notice it, and it would have to go on to our next meeting. So now you can start.
well, thank you. So I'm David Hale, the proponent. I'm here with Lou Levine, who's our attorney, with Ray Willis, who is the wastewater treatment plant design engineer. French, Mark Brooks, my partner, and various others. So why don't you just ask questions?
Well, no, I'll just, with respect particularly to the insubstantial change, condition 54A of the comprehensive permit reads as follows. Without, 54 reads, without limitation, as security for the ongoing completion of the common facilities infrastructure, the project is shown on any final approved plan as to either component. There were two components, the condominiums and the apartments of the project. No certificate of occupancy shall be issued for any building or unit in such component until A, all sewage treatment and disposal facilities serving the building and units as shown on the applicable final approval plans have been approved for operation by DEP. We have a letter from DEP. Do you have a copy? I think we submitted it already.
Yes.
To the board that they have approved us to use the plant, connect in up to 16 units, and to use the facilities at the plant, essentially the tanks, and there seems to have been a concern as to what that language meant. We believe it means, the way it was written, and I drafted it, that DEP controlled how and if and when we could connect. Folks in the town believe that that language meant that, although it doesn't say it, that the treatment facility had to be fully operational. Okay, so rather than being a warrior, I'd rather be a lover, and so we're here tonight. There's been some concern by the town as to whether we should be able to connect in, even though DEP says we can for the first 16 units. I don't know if the board remembers, David, during the hearing process, tried to describe the process of a wastewater treatment plant. And the process of a wastewater treatment plant is that it's, and this gentleman can speak to it better than I do, but just Reader's Digest summary, is that you build it, it has a daily flow, an expectant flow. However, in the beginning, when you first come on, in a typical development, you only have a few units. And all those little bacteria and electrolytes and all those other things, they're not intended to have a very low flow. They just don't work, and they don't work very efficiently. Again, this gentleman can give you a much more engineering background than me. So when we first described the treatment facility to the town and the Board of Health, which was approved by DEP, we explained that in the beginning, when the first units come on, that typically the treatment plant doesn't come on in terms of actual full operation, and it goes into kind of a tank, the tanks that are there, and they're pumped out. As more units come out, and as we get to a point where the system can actually service, it has a minimal flow, but a sufficient minimal flow to make the system work, then the plant is used. So the point being is, tomorrow we're having a clear water test, which is the last test that DEP does to say that the plant is completed. All right, and for all intents and purposes, the plant is complete. Okay, DEP hasn't signed off on it yet, but they've permitted us to connect the first 16 units. Even if they were to sign off tomorrow, and again, this gentleman can speak to it, we still couldn't use the plant because it just doesn't work with the no flow. And Mr. Gallagher is here, he's building the condominiums. He's only going to sell a few units, as soon as he can get occupancy permits, and that flow will not be sufficient to make the plant work once he sells a couple of units, and there's just a few hundred gallons of flow a day. So whether or not we were completely done with DEP, we'd be in the same situation we are today. So we're here to take the concern and potential confusion that we can connect in under DEP's letter for the first 16 units. Again, I don't think it's a big risk on the town's part because this gentleman, let him speak in a second, but plant's fully built, it's ready to be clear water tested, and again, DEP's letter only wants us to connect into the tanks right now. So why don't you describe the flow situation?
I'd like to talk to Mr. Levine about some things he said. You may hold your question.
Okay.
Full presentation first.
Thank you very much. I want to hand out some handouts tonight. These are some photos of the actual treatment plant in its construction phase taken today, just to give you an idea of the overall completion of it. But first, I just want to give you a little background about myself. My name is Ray Willis. I'm the Vice President of On-Site Engineering and also a principal of the company. I've been involved with decentralized wastewater treatment, is what this primarily is categorized as, for the last 18 years. More recent projects that I've been involved with personally that are nearby are Princeton Properties in Westford, as well as Graniteville Estates, as well as the startup of Cobblestone. Cornerstone. So what I've provided tonight is a copy of, just to give you a general layout of the treatment plant. And before I do that, just to go to how the system essentially works. This is an advanced, obviously it's an advanced treatment system which is intended to meet a groundwater discharge permit, which basically says you can only discharge a limited amount of organics, total suspended solids, and nitrogen-based compounds into the groundwater. To accomplish that, this is a biological system. So essentially, it's like us. We need food to eat. And the plant's food is the sewage. Now, because this plant has a total design flow of 55,000 gallons a day, typically to start up a plant and to have it run so you can consistently meet that permit, you need about 10% of your total design flow. So our targeted flow would be, in a perfect world, if we're gonna start this thing up, to get 5,000 gallons of actual flow coming into the system each day. Because essentially what you're doing is, and I'll step through this on the flow schematic. Primarily, these tanks are used for screening, essentially like a conventional septic tank that I think everyone's aware of with a conventional septic system. Takes out the greases, the floating solids, all the heavy stuff. From there, it will go to what's called an anoxic tank. And basically what that is set up to do is the bacteria in this tank are set up to essentially attack the nitrate and nitrite ions in there and convert them. And to do that, we add a carbon source. Now, to have that achieved, you have to have what's called, hopefully I don't get too technical and too over your head. You have to maintain a certain mixed liquor or concentration of bacteria. Now, in order for this bacteria to sustain its life, it needs a certain amount of fresh food coming in, which is in the form of sewage. From there, it goes to an aerobic tank where that mixed liquor is then aerated. Different population of bacteria form in that to essentially convert the nitrate and nitrite to nitrogen gas. From there, it goes to a membrane bioreactor, which is the final step, which then filters the effluent and ultimately sends it through a UV disinfection system, which will kill any pathogens or any viruses through there, and then to the final effluent pump chamber into the field. It's really a great process. I mean, if you were to see this thing operate and look at what the product is that are in this tanks, which basically looks like a chocolate milkshake, and to come out looking like drinking water, it's an amazing technology. Right now, we are ready to start up the plant. The real issue is, in reality, is we need flow to make it work. Ideally, what would happen is that in a normal situation, as with the startups that we had at Graniteville Estates and Princeton Properties, as the units started building up or extending flow, we would just use the tight tank, or the pre-treatment tanks to hold the sewage and let that build up until we get about 5,000 gallons a day, pumping it as we need it, or in those cases, 10% of the flow. So at that point, we can start actually sending the wastewater to the actual biological processes to maintain them in order to meet the permit.
And just the reason the DEP, the 16 units, many are, I think most of Mystic Gallagher are 3 bedrooms, right?
Correct.
So if you take 330, which is 110 gallons a day, and you multiply it times 16, you're going to get the 5,000 gallons a day. That's why they limited it to 16. It keys into we need more than 5,000 gallons a day. So,
Yeah, actually, the 16 was because DEP asked us over, December, January, February, which units were going to get COs and come online. We gave them a list, and that became the 16. Those 16 are actually only going to generate about 2,200 gallons a day.
2,200 gallons a day.
Because each bedroom produces about 50 gallons a day. So the regulatory says 110 gallons, but the actual flow is closer to 50 gallons. So in reality, before we start the plant, we really need 30 or so units in order to make the plant work efficiently and the way it's supposed to work.
I know you have a pent-up question here, but I just want to ask a couple things that I know from the discussions that happened earlier.
First, we need to determine whether or not we can hear this.
Yeah, but we can hear it. We can't make a decision on it unless we determine that it's insubstantial. Is it accurate that some of the 40As have already hooked up to the treatment plant?
Yes.
right,
Two.
And my other question is, how much of the the wastewater treatment plant is left to be done, dollar-wise and component-wise?
So we actually have some handouts that show that when Ray can actually just go through the line items if you want, but there's about $30,000 left under the contract that is not in place. And of that $30,000, none of it is required to make the treatment plant operate, except actually putting the membranes in the tank. And the membranes are on site, but they degrade if they're not in water and working. And frankly, the contractor didn't want to order them, and because it's too early in the process. But I told him to order them. They're on site, and I guess they're in some sort of cellophane wrap.
Yeah.
So they will last a couple weeks.
Just as two final points before, is that we have, or also want to submit and ask the board to approve a performance guarantee for the remaining work that needs to be done. What we call the common structure work, which is, the basically boxwood street work that's undone, as well as a portion of it, a small portion of it relates to the sewage treatment plant. We're prepared to submit that, ask the board. We've reviewed it with town council. He made some changes, and submitting it to the board for their review and hopeful acceptance. So we're entering into essentially a tri-party agreement with the town with $675,000. All right, so in terms of the minimal amount of work that remains with the treatment plant, we're securing that and then some, with the town, tonight. Secondly, and we came here for the insubstantial change. There's been discussion with various folks in the town, not the Board of Appeals, en masse, that we didn't need this insubstantial change. And I said in the beginning, we're here just to kind of end that, as I said, what it says, all sewage treatment and disposal facilities serving such building and units as shown on the applicable final approved plans have been approved for operation by DEP. We have a letter from DEP that permits us to use the plant in the way we want to use it to connect in, essentially, we're talking about the units that Mr. Gallagher is building. He's only trying to connect in right now a couple of units, and we already connected in 2 of the 48 units. So DEP is the one who granted us the permit. We received no waivers from the board. It was a state permit. The Board of Health acknowledged they didn't have any jurisdiction over it. And so our position has been for the last month and a half that we have approval of DEP. There's some discussion at the town level, and we can't get a CO, so that's why we're here tonight, try and clear it with the board.
Ms. Scully's been waiting.
Mr. Levine, your version of history is very different from my memory of it. Quite frankly, we very carefully put wording into the decision that the systems would be completed, because we had this problem right up the street from you when the one behind the Toyota dealership, what was it called?
The Farms.
The Farms actually had houses built and were actively marketing them, had deposits on them, and the septic system was never built. So the goal here, treatment plant, excuse me. The goal here was that the treatment plant be completed before any occupancy permits, and that's why it was written that way, not by accident. Now, you may have a good case, and you may have a reasonable request for a variance change, but I really find it difficult to hear you say that this is a misunderstanding, because it's not a misunderstanding.
Well,
We
truly,
very
it-
carefully put this wording, made sure this wording was worded this way so we wouldn't run into the same situation that we did at the Farms.
So
So
let's not get
so
hung
you
up on
may,
that.
you may have a case.
Okay,
To have you say it was a misunderstanding,
Okay,
I have a problem.
Well, I don't mean to be adversarial. It's a misunderstanding that you have a different understanding than we do. Having said that, we've
We
applied.
certainly addressed it in the meetings.
Okay, well,
In the
again,
hearings.
So
we'll move on.
let me address Charlotte's comment. if I may. The requirement that the components be completed before occupancy permits issued is in the decision, and it's very clear. But there is also the understanding and the expectation that when we got to the end, not every little last thing would be ultimately complete, and we did put into the decision the provision for having some sort of a bond or a tri-party agreement or a performance agreement for all those little last things that will not get done prior to the occupancy permit issuing. And it was intended, I think, by this board, that the treatment plant be finished and that those little last things would be more like the finished top coat on the roads and maybe the landscaping, maybe some tree planting. But as it turns out, whether it was anticipated ahead of time and dealt with by your expectation or not, as it turns out, it now appears that there are some minor, in my estimation, minor things on the treatment plant that still not only need to be finished, but can't be finished until we start running effluent through
Did
it.
I finish?
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
so you've said you have $30,000 worth of components to finish.
Not components,
no.
that's what's left in the contract.
Let's go through that for 1 second. Don't lose your train of thought, but they're not components because I think all components are
Okay, so
purchased and on-site.
$30,000 worth of finishing work to be done to the system.
Well, part of that, just to go through it, there's on the first page, there's $5,500, which are primarily to pay the engineer, us, and general conditions, which is usually a lump sum split among 10 or 12 payments over the length of the contract. And then on the second page, there's a $12,000 item just to basically sink in the membranes themselves. Essentially, it's no more work than picking them up, putting them on some rails and sliding them in.
But they're there on-site.
They are there on site.
So it's labor.
So
Just labor.
basically, the $30,000 is less than 5% of the system, is that correct?
30,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Okay, because I'm looking at the system is costing 1.7, is that right?
correct.
Okay, so we're talking pretty minor.
Yeah.
And
The
we're
only
talking-
thing that is left is essentially punch list items with the building structure itself, not anything to do with the actual treatment system itself.
Can you address the building items themselves? Are they the things like the planting the trees, the bushes,
We're
the,
talking about the WWTF, so
Yeah.
it's, if you look on this list, Cheryl, it's the siding and trim, the doors and windows. See down, these items down here on page 2? It
yeah, I
says
understand, but
shingles, insulation, siding and trim, doors and windows, plumbing.
Yeah, see, I have no problem with it. I just want to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that you're offering a bond for $30,000 worth of work. You're offering a bond of over $600,000. What else does that bond
No,
cover?
the bond is for this and the undone work that's the common infrastructure on Boxwood primarily.
So,
So what is that work? And are you asking us to allow to also waive that? Is
No,
that
no,
in
we're not
front of us all?
waiving.
Not
so
wa-
it's
not
not
waiving.
waiving.
They're
It's not
asking-
waiving, and this is an important point. I met with the building inspector on October 6th, and we went through Article 54, A through F. And the way 54 reads is that in order for occupancy permits, the sewage treatment has to be done, the public water supply has to be in place, the basin binder course, which is C, have to be done, all the stormwater management has to be in place, all electric utilities and heat, et cetera, are in place. And then F says, but if any of those, and it makes no distinguish between A, B, C, D, or E, there's no carve-out that says the wastewater treatment plant has to be completely done. If those aren't done, then a bond can be put in place, or a tri-party agreement, et cetera. So the building inspector, at the time, he didn't read it the way you read it, and, you know, he read it like, okay, you can provide a bond. What he actually said at the time is, for the condominiums, I don't think we'll require a bond, because you've got, you know, $20 million of apartment buildings behind it, and the town has lots of practical control, because we can not issue COs for that. And so, I offered him a bond, and he said he didn't want it until I came to him for COs for the apartment building.
So let me,
What Lou was saying, what I'm saying is that if you read the words on the page, the tri-party agreement should be sufficient to.
so let me explain to the board that Mr. Levine and Roland and town council have talked about this for about 6 weeks now, diligently coming to, and I'm sorry, and town administrator, because there's a lot of input from that perspective too. Talked about this, about how to protect the town to make sure the bond or the tri-party agreement covers the town's ability to finish all this. And the things that came out of that discussion were the following. Town council and Mr. Levine have reached an agreement on the tri-party agreement that I think is fine, and town council believes is fine in every regard. And the way it works is that game, somebody's throwing an automatic game.
No, come in. It is?
Counting down?
Oh, it is.
Look at the counting down,
I have no idea what that is. It's on my ring. Okay.
So they came to some agreement
Apologize.
on the tri-party agreement, and it sort of works like this. There is already money set aside at Mr. Hill's lender. There's real money there to cover the finish of the construction. And that money is allocated out by an architect who's overseeing the whole job and has to say that everything's done before the money can be released by the bank. What the bank did is the bank agreed that they would make the town of Littleton a beneficiary of that contract, and that the same person who reviews the state of completion of all of these items would represent to the town, for the town to rely on, that the next component is done and that the next release can happen. And no money, not too much money will be released. There will be enough to finish all of the components that aren't done yet, as well as the retainage, so that there's plenty of money there to finish this job. The tri-party agreement goes on to say that the town doesn't want to finish this construction and be in the business of finishing the construction, but there's a mechanism for triggering it if we end up having to be there. And the one thing that it's missing, that I talked to town council about before tonight, was I also want a provision in there that if the town has to enforce that agreement in any way, that we want legal fees and costs paid by the applicant. And typical default on the tri-party agreement if the town ends up having to go in and build anything out. So what I understand to be going on is there's two tri-party agreements. One is for the wastewater treatment facility and the roads that Mr. Hale is responsible, or on 15 Great Road LLC is responsible for, leading up to the three large apartment buildings.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
that's correct. So,
Leave it there.
And the second tri-party agreement covers what?
The apartments.
The apartment finished themselves.
Yeah,
Yes.
which we have that, we've shown it to him. Yes, and so it's the common infrastructure in the 40B that the first tri-party agreement covers. The common infrastructure being Boxford Road primarily, and the undone work in the treatment plant. And so attached to the tri-party agreement for the common infrastructure is a 3-page exhibit. 2 of those pages are exactly the 2 pages you're looking at. One of the pages is the site work for Boxwood Road.
That's
That
still
adds up to $675,000.
Now,
Right.
the other missing link is that I understand that 15 Great Road LLC is responsible for the Boxwood Road, but that Mr. Gallagher is responsible for the lesser roads like Hyssop and those other interior roads. And there's no agreement on that, but what I understood was you're not going to be seeking occupancy permits for those homes till that portion of the infrastructure is done.
No, that's not correct. Mark Shire, our attorney, has been working with Chris. Previous to Chris, we worked with Roland. Roland made a determination that we did not have to bond. We've brought the roads, we've brought all the utilities, except for top coating, the driveways, we're done. So we have finished all of the infrastructure with the exception of the top
Except
coat.
with the exception.
And they agreed today, Chris, because Roland is out, that when Roland returns, that he will walk the road to ensure that all of the binder is in place. And then there will be no requirement for a bond because we've met all the requirements and
And-
completed all of that work.
And if we leave this hearing and they determine that there is a requirement
Then we're
for a
gonna come
bond,
back
you'll
and bond it.
satisfy and comply that.
My understanding is there's no need because everything's done. However, if for some reason Roland determines that something is missing, then we would put a cash bond up for that when we enter into occupancy permits there.
Okay, so I'm going to try to summarize in a minute or two.
Can I ask you
But I
a
have-
question?
Yes, and I also have people who came out tonight, and I would like to see if they'd like to be heard. So you
Can I ask-
first.
Yeah, I want to understand a couple of things. All right, so the $30,000, the unfinished septic system, we're definitely being asked about. Are we being asked to approve the bond and what needs to be done here? Is that before us at all, just the septic system?
Well, before us tonight is a question of whether their request for a tri-party agreement for the septic and for the infrastructure is a substantial or an insubstantial change from our decision. I was gonna ask these people to speak before I summarize,
We
but
decide if it's insubstantial, then Roland can decide it, or we
we'll
decide
probably, this would be my suggestion. If we decide it's insubstantial and the tripartite agreement will satisfy the board, then my suggestion is that we allow council to put the finishing touches on it, and we designate that it's okay for the chair to sign it tomorrow, the next day, Tuesday, as soon as the final touches are on that agreement, if we decide it's insubstantial. And, pardon me, and what I think that you need to realize is that, according to the applicant, he believes that that section F is no change whatsoever, that it already says they can do this. They can substitute a bond at this point in time for the work left to be completed. And my reservation and concern, and I think it was shared when the 40As asked to come onto that treatment plant, was that, as you said, we were all gun shy about a treatment plant not getting finished. And so I have to confess, I was pretty adamant with you, Mr. Hale, that I wasn't going to recommend this a month ago because I said to you the components weren't hooked up and everything. What you've done in the last month is substantial and amazing, and I see on this list that there's only 30,000 left.
It's nothing.
And it's not the components, it's really the trim work on the building and making it all look pretty, I think. And as long as the filters are there, they have to be sunk, that's a big cost, but they're on site. So now we could get a scuba diver to finish this job. I'm being facetious because the money is there to pay you to finish the job if these guys let us down.
Absolutely.
So I don't think personally don't think we're at any substantial change or any change at all now, because this isn't a big part of the system that isn't done. I also I took the liberty of calling DEP today and spoke to their legal counsel about this letter and what all this letter meant, and they were as useless as you can imagine.
Definitely
They don't
not
want to go on a limb and be liable for anything. But I did get sort of a confirmation that everything you just said is accurate about the bio and how it has to start up. And yes, they said they treat this whole thing like a tight tank till it fills and it's rearing and ready to go. And I said, well, what happens if it doesn't get going? She says, we're not going to kick people out of their homes. We might spank the applicant and give them some fines. But at this point in time, we're not going to kick anyone out of their homes and stop them from flushing, was the way I put it. And she concurred. So that gave me a comfort level. And I would like to ask, who's here to speak to it?
No, my name's Michael, this is my wife Nicole. We purchased a home on Boxwood, and we just came here tonight to see how everything played
See if
out.
you're going to get to live in it.
Yeah, we're just, of those 16 homes, there are residents there that are anxious to get in. we need that place to live.
And do you want to speak, Ms. Berger?
Yeah, just to say that when the DEP letter came to the town's attention about 6 weeks ago, that I did review it with town council and with the building inspector, and we had town council's opinion that DEP letter, which seemed to give some kind of temporary conditional approval, didn't seem to match the letter of the condition that you had set here. And we had two sets of things to review. One was whether any of the 40B units, which are the subject of this board, could hook up, and whether any of the other lots, which were tied into the wastewater treatment facility, the 19 lot subdivision, the other 5 so-called non-easement lots. And because there's no similar condition to your 53A or whatever it is, to govern those other lots, either the 40A subdivision or the 5, there was no basis for us not issuing a certificate of occupancy for those lots. Nevertheless, because we were very concerned as a matter of public policy that people would be buying properties and moving into homes for which they would seem to only have permission to flush the toilet for 2 months, that we wanted to be assured that the buyers and the banks both saw the DEP letter, and that happened. And that happened in the case of those others, and those sales went through. So as far as any concern as a matter of public policy we might have, that people are, but believe me, we would be the first place that someone would come to complain if something went wrong afterwards. And so we insisted that they know and see what the conditions were, and those went through. And it's fine, and as the chair said, the developers continue to make excellent progress in the intervening time. And that we're very close, it's just the technical answer I think that's been offered tonight should give us all some high degree of comfort.
So, without further ado, I will ask the board for a motion to determine if this is a substantial or an insubstantial change. Bill, do you want to word it?
I make the motion that we declare that the request is in insubstantial change to the comprehensive permit for 15 Great Road LLC 2.
And let's just
15 Great Road 2 LLC.
Let's just clarify the request for a tripartite agreement to be entered into in lieu of a bond, a performance bond, for the construction completion of the infrastructure and the WWTF, okay?
Okay.
In lieu of a bond?
In lieu of a bond. We had allowed that they could have a performance bond, and they're doing a tripartite agreement.
The bond still exists.
The permit
provision,
allows for both.
the provision provides for both.
Okay, they're not in lieu of the bond.
And not in lieu, it's just
Tripartite agreement be accepted.
With the bond.
as a bond. 2 tri-party agreements, one for the apartments and
So
one for...
the $675 went away, or it's there?
No, there's,
The money's there.
The
right
money's
now,
there.
there's $675,000 for the common infrastructure, Boxwood Road essentially, and the treatment plant. There's another performance bond.
With Mr. Gallagher.
No, there's another performance bond we've submitted and town council has approved, potentially with these additions, for the apartments for $375,000 or $350,000.
I would like to hold that one until the next meeting, which is soon, March 12th, to see how much further
February
along
12th,
you are.
February.
February 12th on the apartments. I
Won't change very much.
wait.
Because the
Your progress.
$375,000 is for like finished paving and landscaping on the apartment lot itself, and that's not going to happen until the weather gets better.
Well,
So
if you're
nothing's
not,
going to change between,
then why do we have to vote that tonight?
because our first building will be finished in early March, and we're going
Be looking for
to,
occupancy.
we're going to be looking for occupancy.
So let us do that in February, when it's urgent. I mean, when we're there.
You just stick to the
want to
motion.
look at wording first?
Is that separate from the motion that
Yeah,
we're?
it is separate from the motion, because he's asking you to make the motion for 2 tripartite agreements,
Well,
and
let's-
I'm on one.
Okay.
And you've only had a chance to review one.
And we've only had a chance to review one,
So
actually.
let's deal with
Well,
one. and then-
actually, town council's reviewed both, and they're the same agreement.
But town council hasn't addressed both, with Roland, who's been sick for 2 weeks, and myself as chair, to see what else is.
It's fine.
We'll do it on the 12th, February 12th.
You
So
wanted to see us
this-
again.
This was a lot to digest for this one.
Okay.
So the
I'm
one
still
tripartite-
I'm sitting here being quiet, believe it or not, but I'm
Still
still
doing
struggling with the
It's just
675, what it
like the facility
covers.
itself, we need a little bit to get started. And get
And then
those-
how does this insubstantial change language relate to the wastewater treatment plant not being,
1 second.
okay.
First, we have to decide if it's an insubstantial change, then we have to deliberate how it relates to the WWT.
Okay,
So I need a second on Bill's motion for the 1 tripartite agreement.
second.
Could I ask you a clarifying question, just because the DEP letter that has been issued thus far speaks nothing about allowing the apartment buildings to hook up. And so what we've been dealing with for the last 6 weeks is how do we let the single family, the ownership units, the short list of ownership units that are scheduled to close between now and February 15th, how do we deal with those? And I was on the understanding that's the problem that we fixed tonight.
That's the one we're fixing tonight. And then on February 12th, they'll give us a schedule for opening I think you won't need to be downstairs, sir.
You're right.
Then they'll give us a schedule
You can go right down the stairs right there.
for opening, for what has to happen with DEP and the apartments, which is another good reason to postpone that tripartite agreement till February 12th.
Can I just answer that?
Yeah.
So, at that point, the plant will operate. I mean.
Great.
I mean,
Great news.
it's a state
Thank you.
permit, and.
Thank you very much.
and
Yeah, if you have
We'll
your permit and
connect as
approval
the
on
state
February
allows us to.
15th, you're-
Okay, I have a motion and a second on the floor. None of this is relevant, so can we vote the motion?
You're satisfied with what the bond and is being agreed on, because personally, I would sit here and ask for a complete list of what's not done.
Council has it.
Shelley, you
And
know what the motion
And
is.
it's in the,
But I have faith in Mr. Bergman, I have faith in you, I have faith in our town council.
council has
I
gone
don't
over
need to keep us
that.
here till midnight.
So let's vote it.
Before we vote, let's be clear that Shelley's got the wording
A
correctly.
motion that the board declare the request is insubstantial to the 40B comprehensive permit, 15 Great Road 2 LLC, and request for 1 tri-party agreement to be accepted.
To allow, instead of, and a request for one, to allow a tripartite agreement to cover the balance of work remaining under the WWTF and the just infrastructure,
The common infrastructure.
common infrastructure along Boxwood Road. Want it limited or not?
Sure.
No, it might not be limited.
It's limited in the agreement, in the tripartite.
So I want to just say along Boxwood Road?
Sure.
Okay.
Or you can refer to,
So-
you can refer to the agreement.
In the beginning is insubstantial change.
Insubstantial.
Change. So then I'm looking for a vote on that, please. All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Then the second thing I would just ask the board to vote is that we will permit town council and Mr. Levine to finalize the document and authorize it be signed by the chair after town council approves it as final, so I can do that Friday or Tuesday, whenever it's done. Is that all right?
Okay.
I make a motion that we give our chair permission to sign the agreement.
Authority to sign.
Authority to sign the agreement.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And then we'll see you on February 12th at,
Thank you very much for your time.
February 12th at 7:45.
Thank you for the wastewater treatment presentation.
Dave, I am
I that.
grateful that you worked so hard to get so much done. I was pleased with that part. This is gonna be harder.
Computer, you know.
Are you done?
Okay, I need to go to a planning board meeting, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if somebody wants to make it.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Can I just ask one question before you adjourn? One real quick.
Yeah?
You voted on the insubstantial change. You voted on the tri-party agreement. There are not going to be any conditions of certificate of occupancies. We're by that point, correct?
We didn't vote on you, we voted.
I
No,
don't,
but you
I don't
did,
have any
indirectly.
power, I don't have any power over the issuance of certificates of occupancy at this level. The building inspector has to do that. We're not putting it.
But he's not being instructed. I saw Keith leave. I should have asked. 'Cause
We're
he
not
spoke to me.
instructing him to put, Keith was satisfied with your progress as well.
Okay.
All right, fifth voting member for adjournment will be Alan, because
We've gone in circles.
we've gone in circles. In more ways than one. Second, all those in favor?
Aye. Turn us off?
One apartment building's almost